one big thing people think about a lot when they're saying, yeah, I want to immigrate, I want to move to a new country is, can my kids grow up there? Like, it's a big consideration. It was for me, and it was for Bia too. And you know what? Canada ticks that box perfectly. And so, yeah, if you're thinking of, you're trying to say Canada, the US, like, this is a pretty good episode for you to make the call. Enjoy. So happy to have you this with me. And I'll just get straight into it, to be honest. Like, so let me try and pronounce your name first. Like, is Beatriz?
Beatriz, yes. But call me Bia. Everyone calls me Bia. So
Bia. Oh, okay. Cool. So, like, what does it mean? Like, it's the Spanish version of the Beatriz in Nigeria in English, right?
Yes. I think I grew up being called Bia. In Brazil, it's really common to shorten out the name. So if I meet you and your name is Stephanie, I'm going like, hey, Steph. So it's something like very common culturally for us to do. So I'm actually very used to hearing my name as Bia. So Beatriz is actually my parents when they're like mad at me. They're like, Beatriz.
Okay, cool. Now talking about Brazil, like, I think we're just going to start off with, what brought you to Canada? Like, why did you move to Canada? Like, just start off with that.
Well, Canada precisely was a very interesting story. I've always been many times my whole life. I've had a really good experience with the U.S. Most of my family lives in the U.S. as well. I've had experience there. I'm sure we're going to touch base on that later. But it was after a vacation that I came with my family, my husband and daughter, to Toronto, that I actually fell in love with Canada. It was like I was overwhelmed with kindness, and I absolutely adored the multicultural, environment that I was placed in. And when we were taking a business decision to expand to North America, most people would usually choose U.S. Then when I came across had the experience personally in Canada, I'm like, no way, we're going to Canada, because that's where I want my daughter to have her values and that experience. So it was actually it's a very poetic moment that I had at the CN Tower, that I always joke and people make fun of me because I absolutely adore the CN Tower. So it was actually on the top of the CN Tower that I had that gut feeling and said, this is the place I want my daughter to grow up in, and this is the experience I want to provide her as an individual growing up. So it was all about that.
I really like that. And I think we'll stay on this a bit so I want to ask, when you compare this, like, because I'm just interested in seeing, like, you spent part of your childhood in the States. And so now you come to visit Canada and you're like, this is the experience I want my child to grow up in. Like, were you comparing your time back in the States, or were you comparing just looking at the two countries right now and say, okay, where will I live? Where would I want my kid to grow up? Like, that's a very tricky question, but it was like.
Yeah, as a kid, I lived in Colorado, more specifically in the U.S. from age 8 to 12. So my dad went to get his PhD degree, and then he moved the whole family. So we were there. It was an amazing experience. I have friends from that time till today, so I keep contact. Thank God for those social media platforms that we can actually keep in contact, and for the technology nowadays. So I stay in contact with many of them. It was a really good experience. As I went to elementary school there. I don't think I struggled with too much other than the actual change of environment. But I think the difference is, it was also, I had friends from different parts of the world back at that time in my school. But I think the relationship that Canada has with immigrants is different than the U.S. has. And I personally felt more of the beauty of the immigrants being highlighted here in Canada.
Yeah.
And I felt very welcome being a Brazilian. I knew my daughter was going to be very welcome with her friends, and also all the Canadians and other amazing individuals that we crossed paths with. So it was an intuitive thing, like, the gut feeling. It's just like, I hate this place, and I don't regret it one single bit. So I'm very grateful to be here in this country that I choose to call home. And it's not easy, of course it's not.
Yeah.
But it was a very conscious decision.
No, yeah, I totally feel you, to be honest, because it's just like us. Like, it was when we were thinking of moving. So we had family in the States. We didn't have family here in Canada, but it just felt like this was a place where you could come and you would feel like home. I mean, we have a lot of friends here now, and I have cousins who have moved here now, but at that point in time, it was just like you said, it was just a gut call. Like, okay, the States, Canada, the States, Canada it is. Let's pack our bags and go. And then we left.
And don't get me wrong, I love the US, and my family.
I mean, it's amazing.
I feel always very welcome there nowadays as well, especially, my family is there. So it's a second home, but I don't know. As I mentioned, my dad even makes fun of me. He's like, "Oh, if Bia ever leaves Canada, she's going to go attached to the CN Tower," So, so there is a little, I think it's just like I don't think it's very, I don't know. I think it's something from within that I don't know. Maybe I have something to still accomplish in this country and that I chose. I honestly, I don't know, but I think I don't want to go anywhere else. So I plan on staying here. So yeah, I'm grateful. I love it here, so I can't complain.
Yeah. So let's explore your daughter.
Yes.
And yeah, so I always say to a lot of people that have parents who have kids and who are moving, that, when we move our kids, like, sometimes they struggle and we just don't see it because so, like, let me use myself as an example. Like, my first kid struggled a bit. He's now coming into himself, but I feel like he struggled a bit. And it took us a while to kind of understand what was going on, like, just because he couldn't verbalize what he was going through. And we were just like, this guy is actually dealing with this move as much as we are dealing with it. Like, because we just assume that, kids, they just move on and all that stuff and they just get going. Now, with your daughter, you kind of felt that everything was going to be cool, chill, and all that stuff. I'm just curious, like, do you think she struggled at all with kind of trying to settle in? And the build-up question after that is, considering that you had also moved as a kid, as an 8-year-old, do you think that experience sort of helped her settle in much easier than you did when you were a kid, when you moved as a kid with your parents?
It was funny. I remember my first day of school. I was actually entering grade 3 back in at age 8. So I remember going there with my lunchbox, and I remember my mom's face. So she was like very concerned for our well-being. So I remember also at the time, at age 8, I already knew like how to read, how to write, all of that, but I didn't know English. So my dad put a little notebook for me, and he wrote the questions, the basic things, questions, answer, or something like, I'm feeling pain, or I want to call my dad, call my mom, whatever it is. So he wrote on a little notebook and translated underneath. So I didn't know how to communicate, but I would point out I need to go to the washroom. So I would point it out to the teacher. It was the way that he found that I would be able to express myself until I got a hold of the language. I remember having some friends that did a lot of mime to, communicate with me. So they were like, no, I understand. And they were communicating like with me. So, and honestly, I don't know how that happened. And I think just we're such resilient, strong individuals. And when I see that, that what I was put through as a child, and how I overcame, and how that opened my mind, and it affected my way of dealing with things in my whole life. I was actually very fortunate to have that experience. And then fast forwarding to my daughter, she was 4, almost 5, her first day of school. She's a September baby, so she started and then soon turned 5. And she was going to SK, and she's a whole other level of individual. She's like a human being that's like purely, and such a funny and outgoing child, that she was like with her lunchbox, and she was like, "Mom, I'm ready." I'm like, and she didn't know how to read or write. And I'm like, "Well, if you feel pain, what are you going to say?" She's like, "Oh, I'll do this." And she would just like, point to whatever she's feeling and make like a very dramatic face. I'm like, okay, I think she got that covered. I'm like, what if you want to go to the washroom? You want to pee or something? And she's like, "I'll do this, and I'll show that
Oh gosh, it's such
I
a
want to
sweet
go to the
child.
bathroom." And I'm like, okay, so you're set, kiddo. Okay, I guess you're good. And then she was super excited, and she just walked into senior kindergarten like she was going to communicate in her Portuguese. And then when she entered, I was the one bawling on the other side. I was just like crying, like, oh my gosh, what if this doesn't work out, So then I looked back, and then I understood my mom's face that day, and I understood her concerns, because when you're a kid, I don't think you don't weigh all the things that could happen. You're just like excited to meet new people. And then fast forwarding, I'm just like, wow, that's how my mom must have felt. And I'm glad she navigated very, very, she gave us a lot of structure to know everything was fine. So I try to keep that with Valentina. I'm like, hey, I'm here for you. And I think also the family structure is very important. So she knows that, we're there in case she needs it. She'll find a way to communicate with me and get a hold of me. She clearly made that. I think she's struggling more with the move. We were in Toronto for the past 4 years, and recently 4 months ago, we moved to Barrie. So I think she's struggling more now, because all her friends are in Toronto, and now she's in Barrie in the new school. She's like, "Oh, Mom, I miss my friends," because she was almost like the public relations of her previous school. She knew everyone, the principal. She would go to, it's like very outgoing.
She is outgoing.
Until she has this now in her new school, I think it's going to be a adapting phase for her, but she's acing it.
Yeah, I almost also feel like just listening to you tell the story it almost feels like there's a lesson in which maybe it happens subconsciously, but almost like what happened to you as a kid kind of also shows up in how you grow up as an adult, and also kind of shows up in how you raise your kid, and which kind of somehow preps her for the move in some way that you don't know when that happens, but it's just there, because like everything is just it just stacks up over time.
Yes, it does. I'm honestly, my parents moved around a lot, so it wasn't the only move that they did. So they lived in Brazil. They moved around quite a bit. But then we had the US experience. Then my dad got transferred to Nigeria, actually. So he lived.
Wow.
Yeah, he lived in Lagos for 2 years, and then he lived in Colombia, in Bogota, for 3. I was fortunate besides Colombia, in Lagos, I would go for every 4 months and spend a full month there. So I went 3 or 4 times. And in Colombia, I actually experienced 6 months living there to get my Spanish up to date. So it was good. But I honestly see this immigrating journey and these moves that we have the experience. If you ever have, whoever has the experience, I always say I'm a huge advocate for that, because I think that helps us see other cultures, understand better other cultures, see the beauty of it. Because I call myself, I can call myself many things, but my favorite thing is a people and culture enthusiast. I just adore meeting people from different backgrounds. And if they allow me, I'm just always open to asking questions and understanding more, because I think the more we know and the more we dive deep into other cultures and habits and all of that, the richer we become.
Yes.
It's a knowledge. It's just a very fortunate thing that we acquire. It's not the other part that gains, it's us that end up gaining as individuals.
Yeah.
So one of the big reasons I love Toronto is you meet people from all over the place, and it's magical.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful place. Such a beautiful place. And I agree with you. Like, I tell everyone that, like, first about my kid. Me and my wife say that, yes, like, he had a time when he was just trying to understand what was going on and trying to settle in. But we're like, so we say to ourselves that experience makes him a much stronger person because he's navigated through that and found himself with the support of his family and all that. But I'm like, as he grows older, he's not going to know where he gets some things from, but he probably wouldn't place that, oh, it was when I moved as a 4-year-old kid who moved to a new country as an introvert kid, and I'm trying to find my way, and I found my way through that. Like, because like when we moved to Ottawa, stayed in a friend's house, he started school. We moved to our own place. He had to change schools. We spent like a year in Ottawa, moved to Calgary. He changed schools again.
Oh, wow. So there's been 3 moves already?
Yeah, so he had 3 school changes. He has had 3 school changes already. And we moved 3 times. Like, so we landed in a friend's house, spent 2 months there, moved to our own house, lived there for April to February, moved February to Calgary. So like he just had all that 1, 2, 3. Like, so it's like he was like a bit like, okay, where am I right now? So we're like, what we say to ourselves is that this place we stay in, we're not leaving here for the next like at least 5, 6, 7 years. So we give him some time where he's just in a place. He has a stable set of friends for a while. Because I'm like, okay, you've done quite a bit of movement around and literally we're actually, when he was born, we moved houses, like changed schools. So like wow. from his 2 to 5 or 6, he was literally just moving all over the place. Like, so like he's like, oh, okay, he's trying to settle in, he moves to another place. He's like
well, maybe that will reflect in his life and he'll become a diplomat or something.
Yeah. I really hope so. Like, I hope he becomes something like that. And just to add to what you said about the people and culture thing, I totally agree. Which is part of why I started this podcast, because I'm like, all the stories make us better human beings. Like, it's just expanding your mind about people around you, who they are, where they come from, what they do, what drives them. It makes the human experience a much, much richer thing to deal with, like, or to experience and enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. I think it builds us I always say, I think us humans were made of magic and resilience. So we have it within ourselves.
Yeah.
We're just tapping into those, different inner strengths that we have in order to create an impact, to change, to adapt. And I think I always respect so much people with like myself that, anywhere like that has gone through this immigrating journey, because it's not easy. It's choosing to leave everything you once knew behind, your whole network of connections, your family, everything, the culture, the habits, and then just being exposed to something very new. It takes a lot of strength. So I have huge respect for all immigrants like myself and people that chose to make that change, whatever the reasons are, whether it's for business, whether it's for a better life for their kids. But I hope the world sees that with the lens that I usually see the immigrating individuals like ourselves. So, and I'm very grateful for being here on this channel and you giving the voice also to newcomers and telling their stories. I think it's very beautiful, and I hope you get as many people as you can on this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Now that you're talking about not being easy, let's explore that part. How, I mean, especially considering the fact that you're an experienced immigrant, to be honest. Like, you're super experienced at it. But when was the first time that he hit you ain't home when in Canada here? Like, when he hits you, like, okay, like this isn't Brazil. Like this isn't what I used to know.
Yeah. Well, many things work-wise, and also a lot of I tend to be a more positive person and get all the best outcomes of it, but there was a lot of struggle as well within the family, precisely because we were faced. Not first of all, my husband came. He didn't speak English. He barely he communicated very little in English, but he came, and then he had a business, a very successful business in Brazil. His company, and then he decided to exit that business to join on this adventure of okay, let's do everything we're doing, but in another language. It's like thousands of miles away from home. So he was a true warrior, and he learned the language and had to revalidate all the certifications. And he's a financial planner and wealth management in Brazil. That's what his business was about. And now he had to, still in the process of revalidating all of the certifications that you're required to actually act on that. He went to another postgrad. He already had one in Brazil. He had to do another one here. So everything to learn the Canadian way. So it took a lot of purpose, and it's a lot of hard work as well. So with that, all of his journey and rebuilding everything he once knew in a different language, there was also little things on my side. Like in Brazil, we're used to sending emails, just like a stupid example, but it's just like, hey Dozy, how are you? And it's just like hey Dozy, I hope you're doing well, but we usually do how are you. And it's not common here because people actually tend to respond, I'm doing well. How are you? And I'm like, oh, but we don't answer that in Portuguese. It's like, it's just an implied question. How are you? We don't do that, And then I started noticing, like, okay, maybe there's something wrong. And then I checked, with some of my mentors and stuff. And they're like, yeah, you could just say, I hope this email finds you well. Or I hope you had a lovely, weekend, or you have a beautiful week ahead. I'm like, okay, so no more how are you on my email. So little things like that, culturally speaking, there's a lot of adapting. And also the way sometimes I hear that they talk a lot about the Canadians being very, well, we know they're very kind, but sometimes if they're not interested in something, they won't precisely tell you. They're like, no, we're not doing this. I don't like this. We're not going forward. We're not moving forward. But they'll try to find a very polite way of saying, oh, this is nice. We can touch base in 6 months or something. But it's easier if it's okay, not interested. Thank you so much. I appreciate your effort, but move forward, find someone else. So those things I've learned to navigate as well in business, and understanding what's a true yes and what's a implied no, like a very discreetly, no, it's a no. So there is that piece of business, and also a lot of things happening on the personal side. My mother-in-law was diagnosed before we left. She was already going through a transplant for cancer. She had a bone marrow transplant prior to us moving, and then it was successfully done. But everyone knows the pandemic happened, everything else, and her cancer came back in the middle of the pandemic. And it was a struggle leaving the country to be able to see it. So my husband had to go back for her part of her treatment and stay there, when there were no planes flying out, basically. So he got there, and then when we were in this, as every immigrant knows, when you're just reissuing your visa, if you're in implied status because IRCC didn't give you a response prior. So he was in an implied status for a while, and that happened to early 2022. My mother-in-law got really bad, very worse, her health, and then she ended up passing. And he didn't make it back in time because his visa wasn't issued. So there's a lot of struggles with that. I know IRCC is, I have huge respect for everyone working on that end, and I can't come to the point of judging what's happening on the back end. I know there's a lot of things happening, but it was a very unfortunate situation that my husband couldn't be there with my mother-in-law, and his father-in-law as well, going through that process. So he was able to, after I emailed everyone, I think I emailed Trudeau. Honestly did. And someone from his associate, I don't know who, of course it wasn't him responding, but someone from his team forwarded the email to the immigration department and all of that. And luckily it came through the approval. But it was a little bit late. He didn't make it in time, but he was able to go there and support my father-in-law afterwards. So there are those struggles as well, it's just that I choose to always focus on the bright side and try to live my life on that, because I always say it takes the same amount of energy to think positive as to think negative. And I think thinking positive gives you better outcomes. So I focus on that, it's my life choice and how I tend to do things.
Yeah.
So,
It's
not all flowers, but
exactly. Because you just remind me of, your story reminds me of, so my dad passed last year.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and immigration is such a, this is the part of immigration people don't talk about. So because he I think he just sort of, how when they say older people kind of feel like their time is up, and he just sort of knew. So he didn't want to tell me. So he told my sibling that, so normally in Nigeria, right, we're from the southeastern part of Nigeria, it's Igbos. So when an older person passes on, they put the body in the mortuary and then prep for like an elaborate funeral ceremony. But he told my brother, like, if I pass on, I want to be interred that same day. I hadn't seen my dad. The last I saw my dad was 2020, just before they shut down the whole airspace across the world and in Nigeria too. So I saw he was in my house. I took him to the airport. He flew back home to his place. This was like March 2020, early March 2020. Then I left Nigeria February 4th, 2021. I couldn't see him all through the while because like everywhere was shut down. There was COVID and stuff. So I left Nigeria because I couldn't see him. I went back for friends for my sister-in-law's wedding. And he was like, oh yeah, we just couldn't, he was just too tired, we couldn't see. So you know how you assume that you have time? And then he passes on July 2nd last year, and they bury him immediately. And so like up till today, I just still can't forgive myself, because basically it just means that like I didn't see my dad. The last I saw my dad, last I saw him dead or alive was March 2020. I didn't see his body. I couldn't, like, I went for the funeral last year, but it was just a ceremony. He was already buried. I mean, like, so I did, like, it's probably something I'm going to live with all my life till I die, but it's absolute torture for me every single time I think about it, because I'm like, I say, why didn't I see him when I went there in 2022? I'm like, oh yeah, we both agreed that there was no time and all that, and I didn't see him.
Sometimes we start questioning our choices, right?
That's how it felt for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie that many of the times I was just like, but would she have lived longer if we were there? We used to live just right around the corner from my mother-in-law in Brazil, and we would go there like at least 3 times a week and just have dinner and weekends. So sometimes I do question myself, have she lasted longer? And we'll never know. It could have gone, it could have not. And I would have prevented from, building such amazing things on this end. And honestly, as a mother myself, I know that we all want our kids to be happy. So I'm sure she was very proud of my husband, which is her son. I'm sure she was very proud of our courage to do this. And I try to believe that, the immortality of the soul. So I feel, her energy in basic things, like when she loved to cook. I was always a very bad cook. So whenever I do something that, turns out right, I'm like, she would have been very proud of me. So those things. And my husband is turning out to be an amazing cook. So I'm like, he has the genes. You tend to see things with, it starts building really good memories. And I just try to shift it into gratitude for the time I had with her. Because the opposite what people say about mother-in-laws, I really, really got very along with her. And I since my brother's only him, my husband is only him and his brother. I was kind of like the daughter, to a daughter she would ever, come across. And at least when I was there, I went to all her chemo sessions. I was present. I was always there with her. So I hold on to the good memories and see, as a mom, I would be proud of the choices they made. So that comforts me on the other side. So it's just how the lens of, again, right? How we choose to see things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's not make this too sad. Let's kind of go back to
Yes, let's go to the we took a turn there.
yeah. Let's kind of go back to, so you moved for the business. Like, how was that easy? Was that hard? Were you able to just seamlessly transition the business from Brazil to Canada? Did it happen easily for you?
It was hard. It was really hard because I'm an architect. So my previous business, before I started onboarding on this because I'm an architect, so my previous business was in the construction aspect in Brazil. I had a company there. I would do, all the remodeling, the projects, all of that with my team. So it was, luckily we had a lot of good success there. And then back in 2018, a year before I actually moved here, I started changing and shifting to this education aspect of a business. So one of the companies I have is about building social emotional skills in kids. So, and that really flourished in me after motherhood, because for me, it was always about the architecture and, interior designing and all of that piece. But then after becoming a mom, I'm like, there's so much more I think I can add value to and I could do. So that came about the business I brought to Canada. But it was challenging because it was a new business for me as well, because it was in the tech space. I was always used to doing something else. And even though I had already a year and a half of deep diving into everything and coming here back and forth for meetings, so I didn't just, get on a plane and fly. I came here for conferences to understand which accelerator I was going to be part of. So I came, I think, 3 or 4 times prior to moving and understanding the landscape of business, but still different. It's a different. The only thing is, like, I'm used to working in a man-dominated environment. Imagine construction in Brazil and then tech. So I'm just like, that's okay. That's the easy thing I can navigate. But there was a huge learning curve for me, which I'm grateful for. So I still think there's so much, I have so much to learn every day, and I just want to be able to, but I'm also a very creative person. So I love to be tapped into my creative self. So that's something I cannot let die.
And I have please don't let it die.
So it was challenging, but fun. It was, I'd say that I met so many amazing people, and being part of an accelerator that I'm truly grateful for, which is Global Startups. They were such a good, welcoming environment, and they are just, it's the difference where you feel like you belong rather than you're fitting in. So I felt like I belonged there, and it was a huge catalyst for my transition and everything I did here in the Canadian ecosystem.
Sweet. That's so cool to hear. Like, and that point you make about belonging and trying to fit in, like, it's such a small point, but it's so big, like, because the effect it has just kind of stays with you forever.
It does.
Now, like, cultural differences wise, like, how did it work out for you? Like, so, like, yeah, I know you worked in construction back in Brazil, but here in Canada, like, were there any cultural differences with work or how they approached work back in Brazil? I mean, aside from the EU, talked about the email, which is one thing, but, like, were there other prominent ones that you met and you're like, okay, I have to learn this anew?
Yes. I think I try to, let's say, I think people, one of the basic things I try to empower people that I know that are on the same journey or a similar journey that I am, I always say that we tend to come sometimes to a different country with like an underdog syndrome. And just like, oh, I'm not Canadian. I'm not this. I'm not that. But I've worked so much, and I think it's just a personal thing that I'm working on my self-development daily. I'm always like, and there's no competition. It's just a competition with myself. I'm like, I have to be tomorrow a better version of Beatriz from today. So I focus on that. And one of the things that I think is crucial for any newcomer in this country or any country that you choose to be your home is the self-confidence. And building that self-confidence, it's not easy because you tend to feel sometimes bad because of your accent, because you have an accent, but which should be seen as, this is a reason for me to be respected more. Because if I have an accent, it means I'm speaking more than one language, So trying to shift that mindset on a day-to-day, it's not feeling superior. It's not about superiority, nothing like that. It's just understanding that you have as many good things to bring and put on the table as other individuals as well. So building that strength and trying to understand and find my voice as well in this ecosystem that I'm part of today was a very liberating, and I would say it's a liberating experience, but also I think I was able to show and continue to be able to show the true Bia, so if it's not the way they're used to doing it, it's okay. It's me. And I'll try, if it's something that needs to be adapted and, put in a box for certain reasons, I'll try, but it's not going to diminish my self-worth. I'm not going to be blaming myself for it. I always quote, there's a beautiful quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that every time I'm in any public speaking engagement or anything, I always say that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And I refuse to be seen as inferior in any place I am in. And if I do feel that people are putting me down, I will just excuse myself from that space because that no longer is fitting me. So that for me, after I learned that, and I try to put this in my daughter's day-to-day education, is just like, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So I don't give consent to people putting me down in any aspect, because if I don't know the answers to something professionally, I have the capability of searching for it and finding. If I don't know this, it's okay, I don't know this, but I know so many other things that could be valuable to you. So it's just a matter of putting yourself in a space that you're in, a place that you're like, I'm here to learn continuously. We all are. And that's the beauty of it, because everyone has something good to teach us. Everyone. Even if it's what not to do. But everyone has something good to teach us. So I try to gather that. And that's why I think it's the beauty of communicating and meeting so many other amazing individuals, because I'm able to gather so much knowledge that I'm able to learn from them as well, So.
I needed to hear that, actually. So thank you.
Oh, no.
Honestly, I needed to hear that. Thank you. To be honest, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dozy. That means a lot.
Yeah, I needed to hear that. I mean, if everyone who's listening, please listen to this part. But I personally just needed to hear that. Because you're so right. You could just kind of feel like sometimes, because you moved, then you're the underdog, and you treat yourself like the underdog, and you speak like the underdog, or you're not sure of what to say, or you're not confident enough to talk, or people say, someone once said to me sometime that, could you talk a bit slower? You have an accent, we can't hear you properly. And I struggled to talk in meetings after that for a while, because I just felt like I wasn't being understood. It took me a while to get. I don't know if I ever got over that in that organization, to be honest. Because you have an accent and you need to kind of change how you talk. Maybe you should go for speech. Maybe you should go to a speech training. And I'm like, And I actually did start checking. I actually started searching for speech training. But I guess that's life.
Well, just start seeing it as your superpower. I have an accent. Yes. Make a t-shirt. I have an accent. It means I speak at least 2 languages, So
but yeah. You know what? So like, this is a really good place to end this, but I have one more question for you, because I like what you just talked about now, which is like, what's the one thing that, like, what you find most beautiful about your heritage that you're going to keep with you and with your kid, and like, just, going forward? Because, when we move to a new place, like, there's so many new things coming to us. And like someone said to me, one thing immigrants do, so we kind of find something and hold on to that and use that. Like, it becomes like the linchpin, which every single other thing kind of builds upon. And I just want to know, like, what are you keeping with you from Brazil, from, just from your life with your parents and everything? Like,
that's an easy one for me, actually.
I like that.
Brazilians are known to be very heartwarming and, like, welcoming people. So, first of all, I'm a huge hugger. And so I'm just like, are you okay with getting a hug? I love hugging people, and it's just something I do. And sometimes it's not very professional in certain scapes. So of course I'll handshake in many scenarios, but if I know the person a little bit more, I'm like, are you okay with a hug? So, and we're very, I try to be very warm with my daughter as well. I don't want her to lose that. I think it's okay to hug. It's okay I tell her I love her all the time. And I think it's okay to talk about feelings and we're all humans. We're all on this planet to evolve. And, so being open and true to my feelings as well. And always being very mindful, as long as it's not going past the boundaries of other people. It's something that I try to also be very respectful in terms of cultures. Like some cultures don't do hugs, and I totally take that. But within the people that are comfortable with that, I don't ever want to lose that, that warmth. And things such as being open to, hey, if you're passing by, come on in, grab a coffee, come here to my place. And I'm love to have you, to host you, and bake a little cake and, put a fresh pot of coffee. So it's things like that I don't ever want to lose. And I want my daughter, and if I ever do end up having more children in this country, whatever it is, like if, and her ways of seeing life as well, I want her to have that warmth and never lose it, because I think it just makes the experience a little bit better. Yes.
Yeah. Totally agree. Totally with you. I think Brazilians are a lot like Nigerians, to be honest. But like, let's not go into that that's those similarities. But I totally agree with you in the sense that I just feel like, I say this to people a lot, that we talk a lot about intelligence in the world, like, but I don't think intelligence is going to change the world. It does have its part to play. But what really changes the world is empathy. That's what I think.
You said it all.
Like we can talk all we want about intelligence. It's going to create AIs. It will create all those things. But what really changes the world is empathy. Like, just understand. Like, and if you can put some more warmth into the world, some more empathy into the world, like, we would go a very long way as a species. Like, that's how I say it. Like, it's probably not popular opinion, but it's just how I say it. Like, intelligence is amazing, but it's not everything.
And I think that empathy and kindness is the actual significance of strength. I think that is, you said it all, Dozy. And I think it's, the more empathetic people, the kind people, these are the strongest ones that are able to not respond when you were, receive something you didn't like, but you have a choice, a daily choice of what are you putting out to this world. And I always choose to put out love and, kindness and a smile. And a smile can change so much for some people, right? So I agree 100%. And let's continue to do our, impacting daily the people within our range, right? That will make that happen in our daily choices.
Yes. Thank you so much. Like,
thank you.
This has been beautiful. Like, thank you.
No, thank you. I'm so grateful to be a part of it. It took a little while for us to book this, but I'm so grateful for it. Thank you for the space. Thank you for inviting me, and I will always be eternally grateful. And I really enjoyed this moment.
I really enjoyed talking to Bia, and I really hope you enjoy listening to me and her chat about her journey to Canada, her childhood, and all that. As usual, please like, share, subscribe, follow us on Substack, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. If you have someone who you think will find this useful, please send to them. If you have someone who you think has a great story we should talk to, please send them our way. Thank you so much.